Chapter 14. Cass is back. Three friends united. A month passes. Honestly, I don't know what to call this chapter. Side note from illustrator. I'm sick of you procrastinating. If you don't pick a title right now, there won't be any artwork for this chapter. I'm serious. I'm just going to draw whatever I like, and you have no right to complain. Gilbert. I know you're a bundle of conflicting emotions right now, aren't you? Like Max Ernest, at his worst, you have no idea how you should feel. On one hand, you're relieved that Cass is okay. You know her well by now. She's like a friend, and you wouldn't want anything bad to happen to her. Nothing truly bad, anyways. Sure, she's stubborn and willful. She makes mistakes that imperil herself and her friends. She's sometimes not very nice to her mom. Her ears are too pointy. She doesn't deserve to be punished so severely. Certainly she doesn't deserve to perish in some long mental journey into her ancestral past. You're glad, in short, that she is still alive. On the other hand, you're absolutely furious with me. You're a not-so-humble narrator for putting you through this audacious ordeal. Go on, admit it. You hate me. Why couldn't I have told you at the onset that Cass would survive? Why couldn't I have skipped the coma altogether? Why put you through everything, blip and bleep, zig and zag of her heart monitor? Do I have no heart myself? In my defense, I could say that it was my duty to report the truth, whatever it is. Wherever I find it, but you know better than that. You know me better than that now. So I will respond by stating the obvious. You could have put the book down. And yet you kept reading, didn't you? You kept reading about Cass and Max Ernest book after book. If I'm not mistaken, almost as if you enjoyed seeing the two innocent young people put in harm's way. As if their trials and tribulations existed purely for your entertainment. As if they had no feelings of their own. Please therefore spare me your criticism and accusations, your pleas and complaints, and at the end of the day, your dear reader are nearly as guilty as I. We're in this mud pit together, and don't you ever forget it. I don't know about you, but I feel much better getting that off my chest. Now, can we please get back to the story? Thank you. Let us begin this chapter anew by asking the most basic question. What awakened Cass? If you're the sentimental sort, you might be inclined to believe it was Max Ernest's long and heartfelt beside speech that roused her. All Max Ernest's memories stirred Cass's own memories and brought her back to the present. Combined with the familiar yet always jarring sound of Yoyoji's guitar, they were too powerful an antidote to resist. They're probably what Cass's grandfather or even Pietro would say. Personally, I think it's more likely that the power surge Benjamin created was responsible and that the electrical charge jolted Cass awake. Just think of Frankenstein's monster or the frog on the dissection table. Of course, it is also possible that she would have awakened on her own regardless. As the all-powerful author of this book, I gave you permission to choose whichever explanation you like best. Happy fact remains that Cass was back, returned from wherever or whenever she was, and has gone. As for Cass, not only was she unsure what had awoken her, she didn't even remember that she had put her to sleep. After Yoji returned to her room, he and Max Ernest filled her in on a few vital details. For example, that she had been in a coma for 2 weeks. That, yes, was Benjamin Blake lying unconscious at her feet, and that no, the lights were not out because of a nuclear attack or even an earthquake, but rather because their old classmate had cut the power. Then Max Ernest tried Benjamin's hands together in a handcuff knot. He explained to his friends the Spanish bow line might also work, but I think it's better for the ankles. Meanwhile, Cass slid a couple of her emergency glow sticks, adjusted her IV to a more comfortable position, and settled back into her bed. Okay, she said. You guys have been holding out on me long enough. What happened? What do you mean? Asked Yoji. I mean what happened to me. What else would I mean? I was in a coma, right? People don't just fall into comas for no reason. Was I in a car accident? Did I almost drown? Do I have a rare infectious disease? Is there an alien virus in my brain? Tell me, I can take it. You mean you don't remember? Max Ernest asked. For real? Remember what? Eating the chocolate. Senor Hugo's chocolate? What? That's what did this? Cass asked, completely surprised. Who gave it to me? You did, said Max Ernest, confused. How could she not remember? Why would I do that? It nearly killed me and Yoji the first time, right, Yoji? Yoji nodded, grimacing. No doubt it was insane. Fun, but insane. So then, all this time you were just unconsciously... You weren't traveling back in time? Asked Max Ernest slowly. Was I supposed to be? They didn't have the chance to discuss the issue further because Cass's mother had gotten home. She and Cass's grandfathers could have be heard downstairs at that very moment worrying about the lack of electricity. Max Ernest, are you up there? Is Cass okay? Quick, you guys, untie Benjamin. Just pretend he came to visit with Yoji, whispered Cass. It's going to be hard enough to explain why the lights are out. Actually, it might be easier. We could tell her that it was a break-in and the burglars tied him up, said Max Ernest. How about that? Cass shook her head. No, then she would call the police. Too complicated. Wake up, dude. This is your lucky day. Yoji tugged on Benjamin's ear, while Max Ernest bent down to untie the knots he had just made minutes earlier. It was really possible that the chocolate didn't work, Max Ernest wondered, as happily and relieved as he was about Cass's recovery, happier and even more relieved he'd been about anything before. He couldn't help feeling a little disappointed, and more than a little worried about what that meant for the future of the secret. Cass and the secret. Cass first flushed the memory came later that night as she slipped under the covers of the hospital bed. Mother refused to let her sleep in her own bed until she'd been evaluated by the doctors. Caught between the sheets was an odd gold monocle with two lenses. Cass didn't know where it came from. Later, of course, she'd learned the story from Max Ernest, but she knew that she'd seen it before. When she looked through it, the sensation was familiar, so familiar that it didn't even surprise her when she noticed the monocle gave her X-ray vision. She held the monocle and studied the better part of an hour, but she couldn't remember whether it was seen in 500 years earlier or merely 5 weeks earlier. She didn't need the monocle, she needed a crystal ball. Still, she clutched it like a baby clutching a blankie. It was, she hoped, her key to unlocking the secret of the past and learning the secret that it was her mission to guard in the future. When she woke in the morning, she remembered a bit more of her journey, but it was only the way to remember a dream. Little fragments that make no sense, and you try to put them together. There was a bright light, a ghost, a flying sword, a Renaissance fair, or was that last year's field trip? It's all so confusing. She told Max Ernest on the phone. As the big question, she couldn't even remember whether she found the jester, let alone whether she'd learned the secret. At this point, dear reader, you know more about her life than she did. Over the next few weeks, her mother celebrated Cass's miraculous recovery, squeezing Cass every other minute, rarely letting her out of her sight, which was annoying, but at the same time kind of nice. And Cass's doctors kept calling her for checkups and exams, desperately trying to explain what happened to her, which was funny yet mostly aggravating. Cass, meanwhile, grew increasingly disappointed and increasingly certain that her epic journey had never taken place. She merely experienced a few chocolate-induced hallucinations that caused everyone a lot of aggravation for nothing. The worst was when Pietro visited, posting as a hospital social worker who wanted to help Cass regenerate into the society of the outside world. A funny role for a hermit like Pietro to choose. Cass couldn't think of anyone less integrated into society. Cass was pleased to see him, of course, and couldn't help welling up when he told her how proud he was of her having embarked on such a perilous expedition. And the words that followed were hardly reassuring. "Please try and remember as much as you can, Kara," he said. "I do not want you to put any more pressure on you, but I'm afraid it's too much of the time past, and you will never remember the thing and that you alone can know, that you alone must know. Can I help, like hypnotize me or something?" Pietro shook his head. "I'm sorry, I cannot. Nobody can. It's too dangerous, and the temptation to learn the secret myself would be too great." Casting further in despair, what kind of secret keeper was she if she didn't even know if she knew the secret? Max Ernst and the PC. Once Cass was safely returned to the present, Max Ernst naturally was very curious to hear about her trip to the past. Very, if indeed it was a trip she had made. Unfortunately, as much as he would have liked to spend all his time devising games and tests to jog Cass' memory, Pietro had given him strict instructions not to precisely do that. "She must remember this on her own, for two reasons," said the old magician. "First, there is a danger you will learn when you learn the secret. You did not say that you do on purpose, but there is danger. Second, if she's pushed too hard, we do not know her brain, it is fragile. The coma, it might return. We could lose her again to the past." Even if he wanted to disobey Pietro, Max Ernst immediately became far too busy to spend much time with Cass. That very night that she recovered from her coma, Max Ernst found himself returning to the hospital to visit another patient. This time, it didn't have to sneak in. The patient was an official family member. His baby brother, born several weeks premature, very small but nonetheless thriving. "He looks like a peanut, a very old peanut," he told Cass the next day. "Why do newborns always look so old?" His parents, alas, did not fare quite as well as the new son. Seemingly they'd been avoiding the subject of names until now, knowing how problematic it had been in the past, when the inability to settle on a name for Max Ernst had resulted in him having two names, in their household having two households. Sadly, avoiding had not healed old wounds. No sooner had the baby arrived than they started fighting about what to name him. "We have to name him after my Uncle Clay," declared Max Ernst's mother. "No, we have to name him after my Uncle Paul," contradicted Max Ernst's father. In the end, when neither parent gave in, the second son was given names like the first. Max Ernst's brother became Paul Clay. Max Ernst was not surprised and was only somewhat disappointed to see their arguments escalate so quickly. He had been expecting them to fall out of love and read divorce sooner or later, although perhaps not in the space of a singular hour, but the newborn baby crying 1 foot away. Needless to say, once they were again living in opposite sides of the house, Max Ernst's father was not about to let Max Ernst's mother take care of his baby, and Max Ernst's mother refused to let Max Ernst's father take care of her baby. The situation called for a diplomatic solution, yet Max Ernest feared if he was offered to split Paul Klee in half, they would take him up on it. After all, they had split the house in half more than once. The only way Max Ernest could make peace was to ensure Paul Klee remained in one piece. Was to offer to make peace, was to offer feed and care for the baby himself. They gratefully agreed, knowing how much he'd always disliked having two names. Max Ernest shortened the tiny baby's name to PC and proceeded to change on the little life. For Max Ernest, the next month was a non-stop series of diapers, bottles, burps, cloths, sponge baths. I don't want to go into detail about the first diaper change, or even the second, or the third, or the fourth, or the fifth. But I will tell you that the sixth went smoothly, as did most diaper changes thereafter. Perhaps Max Ernest was not the most natural caregiver in the world, but he did what he lacked in instinct, he made up for in determination. When the baby was asleep, Max Ernest read baby how-to books and watched videos and consulted medical professionals. The receptionist at the hospital was particularly helpful. During school hours, he arranged for his parents to babysit their own child according to a schedule so evenly divided and so strictly enforced that neither parent could complain of its unfairness. Max Ernest was such an effective and unabetting taskmaster that his parents, each of whom had previously been desperate to hold on to the baby, began to rebel and started to skip out on their babysitting sessions in order to keep them in line. He had to start paying them to babysit with an allowance money they gave him. By the end of the month, I'm proud to say Max Ernest may as well have been more an expert baby wrangler in middle school. Yoyogi and the Nut Table. Out of the three young heroes, only Yoyogi had much contact with the old Tracer members during the ensuing weeks. Violin master of the Tracer Chief of Physical Defense, Lily Wee, had finally deemed his violin playing sufficiently advanced that he might forgo 1 hour violin practice each day to devote to the martial arts training. Yoji had escalated and spent much time as he could under her martial musical arts tutelage. As Cass mentioned, Yoji had once eaten Sir Hugo's chocolate and had visited his ancestral past himself. It seemed now that whatever samurai spirit had been possessed him had left Yoji and his residue samurai skills. When 3 weeks after her recovery, Cass's mother had allowed Cass to return to school, the three friends were reunited once more at the nuts table. Yoyogi gave a whisper update of doings at the Trace Society, and reports were not long. Owen, the usual, had always been on assignment. Mr. Wallace, the certified public accountant who was secretly the Trace Society archivist, was spending every waking hour buried in files searching for documents for Pietro. Pietro, meanwhile, was obsessively playing Torchero day and night. He says he's trying to figure out something out about the Midnight Sun, but I think the old dude just likes to gamble. He won't tell you what he's worried about, asked Cass, hoping that Cass wasn't the subject Pietro was losing sleep over. Yoji shook his head. I guess it's really top secret, he said, and he sends Max Ernest a warning about it. Max Ernest frowned. Me? What warning? Yoji shrugged. No idea. All I know is that he's really helping Cass remembers more stuff. It's almost like he thinks that she's the only one who can stop whatever is... Oh wait, I wasn't supposed to say that. He doesn't seem to want to put any more pressure on me, I know, said Cass, miserable. Thanks for telling me anyways. Sorry. The conversation got cut short by the arrival of Glob and Danielle, not Danielle, at the nuts table. Okay, who wants a free dinner to Medieval Days Friends Fair next week? Asked Glob, laying a couple restaurant coupons in front of Max Ernest. Oh, I forgot. He picked a coupon before Max Ernest could grab one. You're not interested in Medieval's Day, are you, Max Ernest? Come on, Glob. Give me a break, said Danielle, not Danielle. But behind his dreadlocks, either gave him a coupon or don't. It's not that big of a deal. Free dinner, you know about Max Ernest, but I'm all over it, said Yoji. Me too, said Cass. Cass wasn't sure how she felt about Max Ernest's new non-friends at the nuts table, but she couldn't help resenting the instructions of her life, and she didn't relish in the prospects of dinner with Glob, but she thought that the Friends Fair doesn't help my memory, but the medieval days will. Who cares if the Renaissance or medievals aren't the same thing? Oh well, I guess you're out of luck, Max Ernest, said Glob. And Leah too. Actually, if he wants, he can have mine. I can't go, said Danielle, not Danielle. You're not going to the Friends Fair? Glob said, horrified. Sorry, man. But that comic book convention, remember? My dad is so desperate for me to read anything with the word book in it that he said I could go even if I had to skip school. I don't know what to say, Glob spluttered. That's betrayal. Reeling from the shock, he sat down. Rolling his dreadlock-covered eyes, Danielle, not Danielle, sat down across from him. There was no way that the other was continue talking without the newcomer hearing. The question Pietro warning would have to wait. The nuts table was rarely so silent, but that night Cass dreamed about her eye, the dark green and almost reptilian straight through her. The double monocle awoke in the sense of foreboding, wondering just what Pietro warning might have been.